Hey, my name is Matt Turner. I'm with the Utah Weatherization Assistance Program and the Intermountain Weatherization Training Center. In this video, we're going to cover Advanced Leakage Quantification, or ALQ. Basically, what we're using this for is to figure out how much leakage do we have going through the ceiling of a house, or how much leakage, how much of the air in the house is leaking through the attic. So in the video, Matt Rogers will show us how to take the measurement inside of our Intermountain Weatherization Training Center model home, and then we'll jump onto another company's calculator, the RedCalc calculator, and we'll show you how to enter the information you gathered in the home to find out how much air is leaking through the attic.
So here I've got my blower door set up, and I'm just getting a baseline on the house before I start my fan. Does anybody have experience with doing ALQ or advanced leakage quantification? Nobody?
Not enough to talk about.
Okay.
I've done it a couple times, but it may need in redneck.
Okay. So now I'm going to turn my blower door on with the house configured to BPI standard for a blower door test, and I'm depressurizing. And I like to set my gauge on 5-second interval, so that's what I'm doing right there. So here I get my first number I'm going to record. The blower door shows the leakage of the house to be at 3948 CFM. Again, I'm depressurizing the house. You can do this with a pressurization test as well. Next, I need to measure the pressure of the attic zone I'm testing with the blower door running. So I'm fortunate in this house to have some pressure taps on the wall, but in the field, you'll have to do your probe into the zone that you're testing. So I need to make sure my gauge is set up correctly for this test. It should be measuring the house with reference to the zone. So that's what I'm pointing out there. My tube is going to be hooked up to my reference port. Again, I like my time average on 5 seconds. So I'll just take a few readings and I'll take the average. And it looks like about negative 46.2 pascals was the average. So I'll record that number along with my blower door reading. Now I'm going to turn my blower door off. At this point, the Home Performance Diagnostic Guidebook explains two methods to proceed here. We'll be using the zone to home method in this video since we want to exclude this attic zone from the envelope. So I'm going to open the door between the house and the zone we're testing. The zone to outdoors method would be used to include the zone in the envelope. If you're conducting this test on a house with a finished attic or a crawl space, doing both methods might help you in deciding whether or not you want to push the zone in the envelope or whether or not you want to include it or exclude it from your thermal envelope. Now I've got to turn my blower door back on, and I'll record the CFM reading again. let that speed up, and I'll record the measurement of 4761. And then I got to go look at my zonal again into my attic. And I'll record that zonal pressure of negative 26.9. The Home Performance Diagnostic Guidebook says to get a pressure difference of at least 6 pascals when you're doing this test, but I found the RedCalc calculator, which I'm going to show you guys here in a minute, works better when you get a pressure difference of at least 10 pascals. And now I'm going to do the main attic. I've already got my blower door number with the house set up, all closed up. So I'm going to just get my zonal into my attic as I turn the blower door back on. And once again, I'm utilizing the pressure taps on this house. Take a few, let a few readings come up here, and I'll record the average. I'll write that number down, negative 34.9 pascals. And at this point, you're probably noticing I'm not using the app on my phone to control the blower door. So as I head back downstairs, giving myself and my cameraman some exercise, you can do this test with your app. I'm just doing it at the most basic level. I'm turning my gauge on and off at the gauge. So now I'm going to go open the door again between the zone that I'm testing and the house. Is there any questions at this point? Everybody following?
At one time, they brought up where you had to, you only could open the door so much. How do you know when to open it so much?
It's kind of you have to touch and feel with that. Again, you need to get a pressure difference of at least 6 pascals. If you're going to use the chart in the Home Performance Diagnostics book, the RedCalc will still work. I just found it works a little better. It's less touchy if you get a pressure difference of at least 10 pascals. So if you're not getting that enough pressure difference, you can go open your door between your zone and your house a little more. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see there the attic hatch is open. Now I'm going to go turn my blower door back on, and I'll wait for that to come back up to speed to get a reading. Who can tell me what my next step is at this point?
See what pressure you get from the difference here.
I need to record this blower door reading.
Yep.
And then, correct, I'll go get the pressure into that attic zone again.
So what happens if your blower door cannot achieve 50? You're way over.
If you're
See how you're getting up to 50? Once
Yeah,
the
you
house is already
probably-
leaky enough, if you're over the 50, what happens?
your blower door number should adjust. Your gauge will adjust to the number that it would be at 50. It'll still do that.
Is your question that it's too, like, your fan isn't able to, like, get up to 50? Is that what your question is? Is that it's too leaky in the house? That
Mhm.
you can't get a pressure? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you're still going to record that blower door number.
Yeah,
Because
Even
your
if it's not
gauge should adjust to a can't reach 50 number by itself.
yeah. Remember, if you're using a DG 700 or a DG 1000, they are mathematically correcting. If you are running it, you're doing CFM at 50. If you'll notice, next time you're using it, your blower door pressure might jump up and down all over, but the numbers they still move a little bit, but they tend to stay pretty close to the 47 whatever we were at. And it's because that gauge is always, even though you're only at 37 pascals or 45 pascals, the gauge is mathematically correcting to show what it should be at 50 all the time. So as long as you're close, like if you were only at 37, you can still use that number. You might have some instances where you've opened up that attic and it just won't even get close to 50. You could try closing it down a little bit. That's kind of the danger of opening it up too much, but
yeah.
But as long as you're close, you can use the number on your gauge.
Did that answer that question for you, Zach?
Yep, making sure everybody else understands.
Okay, thank you. So I wrote down my blower door number of 4557 CFM. And here I'm getting the zonal into that attic space, which is a negative 23.6. So now we're going to jump into our RedCalc calculator. To navigate to here, you're just going to redcalc.com. And there's a couple of drop-down menus here on the top. You're just going to go to RedCalc Free, Airflow Measurements, and it's the Zone Pressure Diagnostics hyperlink right there. So I wrote down all my numbers, and we're first going to do our addition attic. And we did a depressurization test with our blower door. The reason that's going to matter is our signs are going to matter when we're filling in this calculator. So if you did a pressurization test, all your values are going to be positive instead of negative. So our blower door, we got up to negative 50 pascals. And then our zonal into our zone that we're testing was a negative 46.2. And our first blower door number was 3948 CFM. Everybody following so far? Any questions? And we turned our blower door back on after opening our attic hatch. Got our house back up to negative 50 pascals. And our zonal into our attic then was a 26.9. And our blower door went to 4761. So you can see we get a slew of numbers down here at the bottom of our calculator, but the real important ones to us, this number right here. And what that's telling me is we can get, if we do really good air sealing in that attic, we can get a 360 CFM reduction on our blower door for our house. And the other number I thought was interesting was this number here at the bottom. It gives you an approximation of your whole house leakage passing through that zone. So just air sealing that addition attic, we could get a 9.2% reduction on our whole house blower door. Everybody following that?
Yep.
Okay, that was our addition attic. Now we're going to go put in the numbers from our main attic. Again, our pre-blower door doesn't change. We're still at 3948. But our first zonal into our attic space was a negative 34.9. And then with the hatch open, we got a negative 23.6 and a blower door of 4557 CFM. So you can see the large difference in those two numbers just from those attic spaces. Our calculator here is estimating we could get a 1400 CFM reduction by air sealing that attic space, the main attic in that house, and get an estimated 35% reduction on our blower door. Any
All right.
questions now?
I want to see you go get it now. Let's see it really happen.
Ready? Great. Now, I thought this was a good tool. It should help you guide your air sealing strategy, especially if you have a house with this type of condition. You got two different attic spaces or a crawl space. You're trying to decide whether or not you want to include it or exclude it from your house. It'll give you a good indication of how many CFM you can actually cut out of your blower door number.
So what do you guys do with this information?
Well, you put on your air sealing strategy, showing those numbers right there to the guys, and so they know where to go.
Yeah, I think it's usable information for writing up a strategy and being able to use it to separate certain spaces more than anything. And being able to say we can 100% air seal a specific area is realistically kind of tough. You can say you're going to go in and air seal a majority of a space, but getting 100% of it might be a little bit of a stretch. But it definitely gives you a number to shoot for and at least say, okay, we want to try and reduce this portion of it.
What if, so this one says, and hopefully most everybody on the call is familiar with our training house. This is saying 35% of all the leakage in the entire training house, 35% of it is through that main floor attic. And that one makes sense to me because I know how leaky the knee wall is and the ceiling is, and that just all the connections and the bypasses through the balloon wall and things like that. This one makes a lot of sense to me. What about the first one? So this says there's a chance, there's an opportunity for up to 1400 CFM of infiltration reduction. The other one said, how much did we get? Like 300 and something?
360.
So what if you only got 360 and it said, was that like 8 or 9% of the home's leakage?
9%, yeah.
9%. What if that was a house with 16 inches of insulation already in the attic? What would you do with that information?
Well, if that was the only thing you had, say the house was already tight, you got that number. I mean, that's the only place you're going to go is in the attic. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. What if you had identified 2 or 3 other areas that were really leaky and you were finding that this particular area was not? I feel like this number can be extremely valuable to auditors.
You can definitely help you guide your focus for sure. It tell you where you can put more of your time and energy for sure.
I've come across a few homes where I've seen auditors send the crew up into the attic where I'm looking at what was going on in the home, what the pre-zonal was and things like that. And I'm scratching my head and wondering, why did you send them up there? Most homes, you should send them up there. Most of the time you should, but this could help you find those few cases where like there really is no opportunity. And in a lot of cases, this will help you recognize that there's not only an opportunity, but there's a huge opportunity up there to go and do some air sealing.
Yeah,
The
it
zone,
makes sense.
go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
It makes sense. Like, say you have, like, going back to a tie house, right? If you had that 360 CFMs, knowing that you got that, and say you have $250 in air sealing money, where are you going to send them if you have not that much budget?
You're going to go to the most effective area.
Right, exactly, because that's where you're going to spend your money, where it's going to make sense.
Yeah. The other thing to pay attention to, and look at his zonal. What was his zonal? If he had not done the advanced leakage quantification part, what was his zonal to his attic on this one right here, on the main attic? It was the 34.9, right?
Yes.
And in most situations, you're going to find it's like, oh, wow, there's the house is quite connected, or the attic, sorry, is quite connected to the house. We have a lot of leakage there. You will find, though, if you'll do this a lot, you're going to find a few houses where your zonal is going to be like a 42 or a 43, and you'll be thinking, there's not much opportunity there. And then you'll run these numbers and you'll find, oh, wait a second, there's actually a big opportunity there. I just didn't realize how much exterior attic ventilation there was, and that was messing with my zonal. Like that first zonal measurement doesn't really tell you much until you actually start
Opening the door and taking your other measurements.
Yeah. So how many numbers did he have to collect to get this measurement? Just on, if he was just doing it on one attic, how many measurements or how many numbers did he have to write down to come back to the office and figure this out?
Four.
Good. Yeah, only 4. I just need the blower door with the house closed up and the pressure into the zone you're testing with that blower door. And then you open the door into the zone you're testing, get your blower door number again, and a zonal into that zone again. Those are the only 4 numbers I need.
So based on a standard audit, how many extra numbers you got to collect? Just 2, because you already collect your blower door and your zonal into your attic. So this test, I would like to I'd like to make this required in the near future. So I want to ask you guys to go out and start practicing this now. And really all we're asking you to do is, once you've set up your blower door, go open the attic and take and measure the other 2 measurements. Get your blower door and get your zonal once your attic's open. It takes, I've done this in a handful of homes. It takes me about an extra 5 minutes. And then I have much better data than what I had with just a zonal to the attic.
If you're doing, I just want to say this as well. If you're doing this test into a zone where you don't want to be pulling things into the house, so you have a really nasty crawl space, or your attic is not in the condition where you want to pull the air in, you can do this with a pressurization test as well.
What are your thoughts on all that? Or concerns? Sweet, no concerns. Sounds good to me. Will you guys give this a try? Will you test this?
Hey, hey, Turner.
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. There are some things I was wondering here. Like, I remember, like, last time I opened a attic space that had blown insulation. It all went into the house. But then again, if I go positive just because of that, I'll be losing the other benefits of doing depressurization, like for ductwork and that kind of stuff. So I could see this like for some, I mean, definitely it's clear like what the advantage is, and especially if you're low on air sealing budget, and gives you like that idea of like where to focus. Honestly, I'm here time enough to see that every time that you guys say that something's gonna take an extra 5 minutes, it's never an extra 5 minutes on our houses. But at the same time, it really looks like an interesting direction to follow. So maybe like the idea is like, can we try to figure like some things out, like some parameters, like, you know, like when like it's certain material, or when the zonals are around certain number or whatever, because I really think that in some cases this will make a lot of difference in terms of like us not doing something that won't make a difference and doing something that will make a lot of difference. But I mean, if I am going to pressure, maybe that, I mean, if I'm going to pressurize a house anyway because of some other issue, that could be a good thing to do, because then it won't take me more time. But if I'm depressurizing the house, and unless the insulation is bad, I mean, it just like blows all around the closet or whatever, like the access. So that was like one thing that was worrying me. I don't know, but it looks like a good idea. Just like thinking how, you know, to really do it in the actual houses we've been to. And then and sorry, and then again, if we are going to do this in a regular house, if we are going to use this both for crawl spaces and attics, that's something. If we're going to do it only for attics, that's something else. And so kind of like it'll be interesting in the next months, kind of think what the strategy could be.
Yeah. So thank you, Ricardo, for all that. Like those are, you've expressed some of my thoughts and concerns about it. Absolutely. You are going to have a bunch of those homes where you open up the attic and it's just going to want to snow on you. You don't have to, if you set up and did a depressurization test on the house, that's fine. When it comes to doing this measurement, you can flip your fan around and pressurize the house. And it's okay if you pressurize the house just for this test, but you've depressurized the house for your blower door and everything else. There's nothing wrong with that. But your question about, like, you're kind of wondering, well, you know, is there a point where if my zonals say this, I should do that, and if my zonals say that, I shouldn't do that? That's a question I have. And that when I say I would like to make this required, we need more data. And that's why I'm asking, will you guys go out and start testing this, and let's come back and talk about this some more. Maybe in our next technical meeting, we can talk about what you guys have found for a few minutes, and or if you guys are finding interesting things, or you're starting to get that gauge of, you know, when I do it on a home that has a zonal of something less than 40, it's actually really effective, but everything beyond 40, it didn't really do much for me. Those are the kind of, that's the data that we would actually be really helpful if we do move forward and say, you know what, we are going to start requiring this. We did it in a bunch of crawl spaces and got weird information, but we found we got consistent stuff in attics. So let's go ahead and require it in attics whenever there's an attic on the pressure boundary of the home or something, you know, like that's kind of what we're thinking. But I'd like you guys to go out and try it. The other thing is I really want you guys to practice this, because this is a valuable tool, and we've trained on it in the past. I've seen very little implementation on it. And I really do think there's going to be a handful of times where if you'll take, and you're absolutely right, every time we ask you to do something more, it just adds to the total time on the house. I am not exaggerating when I say this takes 5 minutes.
Now you gotta turn your fan.
So give it a try. What was that? Give it a try. Test it out. Maybe the first time it might take you a little longer, but once you understand the concept, you will find that you can collect these extra 2 numbers fairly quickly.
Especially if you're using your blower door app on your phone, you don't have to walk back and forth, turning the blower door on and off like I did.
Yeah, but I do recommend it's easier, cleaner to do this with a pressurization test. So you may want to kind of get in the practice of flipping that fan around. If you have a little jumper loop that you can stick on your gauge so that you're referencing the outside properly.
I can tell you that when Wade went over this years ago, he had us trying to figure out all the airspace for the attic vents and the eave vents, and that was really confusing. So if this takes all that out of the equation, that makes it much easier.
Yeah, I hope you can see it's just those 4 numbers, and once you've done it once or twice, like I don't even when I've done it out in the field, I literally just write down the 4 numbers on my notes, and then when I get back, and the thing you want to remember is just what Roger said. You want 6 to 10 Pascal difference. So if your first zonal was the 34.9, then you need to open something up so that it creates a big enough zonal difference, so that our second zonal, it looks like, was 23. So we had 12 Pascal, some give or take difference. That's enough. That's what you need. But once you've got that difference, then you're in the right range, and it'll give you a number. But yeah, give it a try, please. And then let's talk a little bit more about what you guys learn.
So
I hope
Matt,
it'll be helpful.
and so can we think about maybe set up a day where we or some of us can go over there to practice this on the training house? Maybe that would be interesting, like to do that with some assistance, like before we go. I mean, we can try to do it in some real houses, but wouldn't be a bad idea, like 2 of us going over to the training center to practice, like one afternoon or something.
Yeah, if you needed to set something up, absolutely. But don't hesitate to try some of this stuff in a client's home. The training center is a very sterile environment. I'm don't know if any of you have thought this through, but Rogers just showed where he conveniently plugged into these ports that were labeled. Where do you stick your hose for the zonal? And one of the things that you've got to do consistently, if we're going to go and if you test this as an auditor, well, that gives you a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the attic. The very next step is the QCI should also test this. If we're really going to get good data on whether or not, okay, I identified there was an opportunity to there was 1,400 CFM of leakage through the ceiling on this house. Did you move the needle? Because if all the QCI does is go collect the post zonal to the attic, that doesn't mean anything to us. We have no idea. The only way we'll know if we were really effective on our attic air sealing is if we actually do post ALQ. So QCIs, watch for this. If an auditor is tested for this on a house, you should test for it as well and see if your air sealing crew actually had an impact. Because if you guys understand zonals, you guys should start seeing that you can move your attic zonal numbers by just simply tightening up the basement. That will change your attic zonal numbers. It does it every time. So we have no idea if your air sealing in the attic was effective unless we actually measure it like this. And that's all part of the goal too. Like if we're ever going to get better at air sealing, and we've made major strides, but if we want to get better, we have to take better measurements. So give this a try, and let's talk about it over the next couple of months and see what you guys are learning and what we can do to improve this process.